The telegram that arrived at the station in Eureka, Nevada on a scorching afternoon in July of 1878 brought news that would change everything for Olivia Brennan, though she did not yet know it as she stepped off the dusty train with nothing but a worn carpet bag and the clothes on her back. Olivia had traveled from Boston with the promise of marriage to a man she had never met, a merchant named Robert Halloway, who had corresponded with her through letters arranged by her late aunt. The letters had been kind enough, speaking of prosperity and a comfortable home, and Olivia had accepted his proposal because staying in Boston meant working herself to death in the textile mills or worse. She was 22 years old, educated enough to read and write beautifully, but without family or fortune. The promise of a new life in the West had seemed like Providence, but Providence had a cruel sense of humor. The station master, a portly man with spectacles that kept sliding down his sweating nose, looked at her with something between pity and discomfort when she approached his window and gave her name. "Miss Brennan," he asked, and she nodded. "I am afraid I have some unfortunate news. Mr. Halloway passed away 3 weeks ago. Pneumonia took him quick. The telegram was sent to Boston, but I suppose it did not reach you in time." The world seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. She gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles going white. "He is dead." "Yes, miss." "I am real sorry. If you need to arrange passage back east, I can help with that, though it will take some time to sort out the fare." Olivia's throat tightened. She had spent every last cent she possessed on the journey west. There was nothing left, not even enough for a single meal. "I have no money for a return ticket." The station master's expression grew more uncomfortable. "Well now, that is a problem. Do you have any other family or acquaintances in these parts?" "No one." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. A few other travelers in the station were beginning to stare. Olivia felt heat crawling up her neck that had nothing to do with the Nevada sun. She was stranded, completely alone in a town she had never seen before, without prospects or resources. "Perhaps one of the local families might need help," the station master offered weakly. "A governess or a cook or something of that nature." Before Olivia could respond, the door to the station swung open and a man walked in, bringing with him the smell of leather, dust, and horses. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build that spoke of hard physical work. His hair was dark brown, almost black, and fell just past his collar beneath a weather-beaten hat. His face was tanned from long days in the sun, with strong features and gray eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy: denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, a bandana around his neck, and boots that had seen plenty of miles. "Excuse me," he said, his voice a low drawl that managed to be both polite and commanding. He nodded to Olivia, then addressed the station master. "I am looking for a package that should have arrived from Carson City." "Mr. Morrison." "Yes, sir. Let me check the back." As the station master disappeared into the storage room, the cowboy glanced at Olivia again. His gray eyes were observant but not unkind. She realized she was still gripping the counter and forced herself to let go, smoothing her traveling dress with trembling hands. "Forgive me for overhearing," he said quietly, "but it sounds like you are in a difficult situation." Olivia's pride warred with her desperation. Pride lost. "My intended passed away before I arrived. I find myself without resources or connections here." He studied her for a moment, not with the predatory calculation some men might have, but with genuine concern. "That is hard luck. I am sorry for your loss." "I did not know him well enough to mourn," Olivia admitted, then flushed at her own honesty. "That sounds terrible." "It sounds honest." He removed his hat, revealing more of his face. There was something steady about him, something that made her feel fractionally less panicked. Vincent Morrison. I run a ranch about 10 miles outside town. Olivia Brennan. The station master returned with a wrapped parcel. Here you are, Mr. Morrison. Some mechanical parts from the catalog, looks like. Much obliged. Vincent paid for the package, then seemed to hesitate. He looked at Olivia again, then at the station master. Frank, does the boarding house have any rooms available? Should do, but Miss Brennan was just explaining she does not have funds at present. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Olivia felt herself shrinking under the weight of her circumstances. She had been raised to be proud, to hold her head high, but it was hard to maintain dignity when you were destitute in a strange town. Miss Brennan, Vincent said carefully, my ranch has need of someone to manage the household. The work would include cooking, cleaning, mending, and general upkeep. I had an older woman helping before, but she moved to San Francisco to live with her daughter. I can offer room, board, and fair wages. It is honest work, and I give you my word you would be treated with complete respect. Olivia blinked, caught off guard by the offer. You do not know anything about me. I know you traveled across the country for the promise of marriage, which takes courage. I know you speak well and carry yourself with dignity despite hard circumstances. And Frank here can vouch that I am a decent man who would not make such an offer if it was not genuine. He glanced at the station master. It is true, Miss Brennan, Frank confirmed. Vincent Morrison is one of the most respected ranchers in these parts, honest as the day is long. But you do not know if I can cook or clean or do any of those things properly, Olivia protested, even as hope began to flutter in her chest. Vincent's mouth quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Can you? Yes. I was raised by my aunt who believed in practical skills. I am a good cook and a hard worker. Then we have an arrangement if you are willing. The house has a separate room for you, and I spend most of my time in the bunkhouse or out on the range anyway. You would have your privacy and your dignity. You have my word on that. It was an extraordinary offer from a stranger, and Olivia knew she should perhaps be more cautious. But what choice did she have? She could accept his help or find herself in desperate straits very quickly in this harsh country. Why would you help me? She asked. You do not know me at all. Vincent met her eyes directly. Because someone should, and because I do need the help at the ranch. It is not charity if you are working for your keep. Something in his straightforward manner convinced her. There was no pity in his tone, no sense that he saw her as an object of either scorn or inappropriate interest. He was offering her a job, plain and simple, at a moment when she desperately needed one. Then I accept, Mr. Morrison, and I thank you. He nodded and settled his hat back on his head. I have a wagon outside. We can head out whenever you are ready. Olivia picked up her carpet bag, which suddenly felt impossibly light given that it contained everything she owned in the world. I am ready now. The ride out to Vincent's ranch took them through landscape, unlike anything Olivia had seen in her life. The vast expanse of Nevada desert stretched in all directions, dotted with sagebrush and the occasional juniper tree. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. The sky was so huge and blue it almost hurt to look at, unmarred by the coal smoke and buildings of Boston. Vincent drove the wagon with easy competence, the reins loose in his strong hands. For the first part of the journey, they rode in silence. Olivia was too overwhelmed by everything that had happened to make conversation, and Vincent seemed content to let her process in peace. Finally, as they followed a dirt track away from the main road, he spoke. I should tell you a bit about the ranch so you know what to expect. It is called the Mesa Verde, though there is not much verde about it most months. I run about 300 head of cattle with the help of 4 ranch hands. They are good men, respectful. They eat in the bunkhouse mostly, but sometimes they come up to the main house for Sunday dinner. The house itself is not fancy, but it is solid. Built it myself 4 years ago. How long have you been in Nevada? Olivia asked, grateful for the distraction of conversation. 6 years now. Came out from Missouri after the war. Worked on other people's ranches until I could afford to start my own. He glanced at her. What about you? Boston born and bred? Yes, though I have not much fondness for it. My parents died when I was young and I was raised by my aunt. She passed last year and I found myself without prospects. A mail-order marriage seemed like the best option available. Must have taken guts to travel so far on faith or desperation. Olivia smiled ruefully, though perhaps they amount to the same thing sometimes. This time Vincent definitely smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warmer. Perhaps they do. As they crested a low rise, the ranch came into view. It was modest but well-maintained, with a main house built of wood and stone, a large barn, several outbuildings, and a bunkhouse set at a respectful distance. A corral held several horses, and cattle dotted the scrubland beyond. It was not grand, but there was something honest and solid about it that appealed to Olivia immediately. It is lovely, she said, and meant it. Vincent looked pleased. It is home. Come on, I will show you around. The main house was indeed simple but comfortable. The front door opened into a main room that served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace, a sturdy table and chairs, and an iron stove for cooking. 2 doors led off from this main space. Vincent showed her to one, which contained a small but clean bedroom with a real bed, a washstand, and a chest of drawers. This would be your room, he said, standing carefully in the doorway rather than entering. The other room is mine. There is a root cellar out back for storage and a well with good water. The privy is behind the house. Olivia set her carpet bag on the bed, running her hand over the quilt that covered it. The fabric was worn but carefully mended. Did you make this? Vincent actually looked embarrassed. The quilting? No, that was Mrs. Patterson, the woman who helped before. She left it when she went to California. My stitching is only good for saddle repairs. It is nice. All of this is nice. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Vincent, please. We will be living under the same roof after all. No need for formality. Then you should call me Olivia. He nodded, then seemed uncertain what to do next. Finally, he said, I expect you are tired from traveling. Why do not you rest a bit, and I will show you where everything is later. There is bread and cheese in the cupboard if you are hungry. That sounds perfect. After Vincent left, closing the door quietly behind him, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed and let herself feel the full weight of the day. This morning she had been on a train, anxious but hopeful about meeting her intended. Now that man was dead, and she was alone on a ranch with a stranger who had shown her unexpected kindness. She should probably be more frightened than she was. But there had been something in Vincent Morrison's steady gray eyes that made her feel, if not safe exactly, then at least not in immediate danger. He had given her a way forward when she had none, and for that she was grateful beyond measure. The next few days passed in a blur of adjustment. Olivia threw herself into the work of managing the household, partly because she wanted to prove her worth and partly because staying busy kept her from dwelling on how dramatically her life had changed. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, discovering that Vincent was tidy but clearly unfamiliar with the finer points of housekeeping. She organized the root cellar, mended clothes that had been awaiting attention for months, and began cooking proper meals. Vincent was gone most of each day, working on the range or mending fences, or doing any of the 100 tasks that running a ranch required. He usually came back to the house in the evening, dusty and tired, for dinner. At first, their conversations over these meals were awkward and stilted, but gradually, they began to ease into something more natural. Olivia learned that Vincent was 26 years old, had fought in the war on the Union side despite being from Missouri, and had lost most of his family to various tragedies. His father had died at Shiloh, his mother of fever, and his younger brother in a mining accident in Colorado. The ranch was all he had built for himself, wrested from harsh land through sheer determination and hard work. Vincent learned that Olivia had been educated by her aunt, who had been a schoolteacher before marrying. She could read Latin and Greek, could cipher accounts, and had a passion for books that had been difficult to indulge given her circumstances. She had worked in the textile mills for 2 years after her aunt died, saving every penny for the hope of a better future. "You are overqualified to be keeping house for a rancher," Vincent observed one evening as they finished dinner. Olivia smiled. "Education does not pay the bills, and there is dignity in honest work, whatever form it takes. Still, seems a waste." "Nothing is wasted if it keeps you alive and gives you a chance for something better." She stood to clear the dishes. "Besides, I am happier here than I was in Boston. The work is hard, but it is mine. I am not just a cog in someone else's machine." Vincent watched her move around the kitchen with an expression she could not quite read. "You have made this place feel different, more like a home and less like just a place I sleep." The compliment warmed her. "I am glad." As summer deepened into August, Olivia found herself settling into the rhythm of ranch life. She rose early to make breakfast, spent her days on the endless tasks of housekeeping, and fell into bed exhausted but satisfied each night. On Sundays, Vincent's ranch hands would come to the main house for dinner, and Olivia would cook a feast that the men devoured with appreciation and compliments that made her laugh. The hands were a varied group. There was Tom, the oldest at 45, who had been a cavalry scout and had a dry sense of humor. Miguel was from California, teaching Olivia Spanish words while she taught him to make biscuits. Young Jamie was only 19, an orphan like herself who had found a place on the ranch. And there was Ed, quiet and solid, who had a gift with horses. They all treated Olivia with perfect respect, tipping their hats when they saw her and keeping their language clean in her presence. She could tell that Vincent had made clear what the expectations were, and she was grateful for it. But it was Vincent himself who occupied more and more of her thoughts as the weeks passed. She found herself watching for him as the day drew to a close, listening for the sound of his boots on the porch. She noticed things about him. The way he was unfailingly gentle with the horses, the quiet competence with which he handled problems, the rare but genuine smiles that lit up his serious face. He was kind to her in ways both large and small. When he went into town, he always asked if she needed anything. When she mentioned missing books, he brought her a novel from the general store. When a rattlesnake appeared near the house, he killed it quickly and made sure to check the area thoroughly so she would not worry. Olivia tried to tell herself that gratitude was making her feel things that were not really there. But gratitude did not explain the way her heart sped up when Vincent laughed at something she said. It did not explain the way she found herself putting extra care into her appearance, or the disappointment she felt on the rare evenings when he ate with the hands in the bunkhouse instead of coming to the main house. She was falling in love with him. She realized one evening in late August as she watched him work with a young horse in the corral. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. Vincent had given her a job, nothing more. He treated her with respect and kindness, but he had never indicated any romantic interest. For all she knew, he saw her as a responsibility he had taken on, or simply as an employee who happened to live in his house. The thought of ruining the delicate balance of their situation by revealing feelings that were not returned made her stomach clench with anxiety. She had nowhere else to go, no other options. If she made things awkward between them, she could lose everything she had built here. So she kept her feelings locked away and tried to focus on her work. But it grew harder each day, especially as she began to notice things that made her wonder if perhaps Vincent's feelings were not entirely neutral either. There was the way his gaze would linger on her sometimes when he thought she was not looking. The way he seemed to find excuses to come back to the house during the day. The time she had climbed on a chair to reach something on a high shelf, and he had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, steadying the chair with his hands and looking genuinely worried that she might fall. "You should have called for me," he had said, and there was something in his voice that was more than just concern for an employee. "You were busy," she had replied, very aware of how close he was standing. "I'm never too busy to help you." The moment had stretched between them, charged with something unnamed, before Vincent had stepped back and Olivia had climbed down, her heart racing. September brought cooler temperatures and the hard work of preparing for winter. There was food to preserve, repairs to make before the weather turned harsh, and cattle to move to different grazing areas. Vincent worked even longer hours, and Olivia saw the fatigue in the set of his shoulders when he came home. One evening he returned to the house limping, and when Olivia asked about it, he brushed her off with a claim that he had just twisted his ankle. But she could see pain in the tightness around his eyes and insisted on looking at it. "It is nothing," Vincent protested, but she gave him a look that brooked no argument. "Sit down and let me see." Reluctantly, he sat and allowed her to examine his ankle. It was badly swollen, turning purple already. Olivia fetched cold water from the well and made a compress, kneeling on the floor to wrap it carefully around his injury. "You need to stay off this for a few days," she said firmly. "I do not have a few days. There is too much work to do. The work will still be there. This will get worse if you do not rest it." Vincent looked down at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. His hand came up as if to touch her face, then stopped, falling back to his side. "You take good care of me," he said quietly. "Someone needs to." Olivia finished securing the compress and stood, very aware that she had been kneeling at his feet, that her hands had been on his skin. "You push yourself too hard. The ranch does not run itself. You have good men working for you. Let them handle things for a day or two while you heal." He smiled slightly. "When did you become so bossy?" "When I realized you have no sense of self-preservation." But she smiled back, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Vincent broke the moment first, glancing away. "I will try to take it easier, for a day at least." It was a small victory, but Olivia felt absurdly pleased by it. She made dinner while Vincent sat with his leg elevated, and they talked about small things. The change in the weather, a letter Tom had received from his sister, the coyotes that had been making noise at night. But underneath, the ordinary conversation was a current of something else, something that was becoming harder and harder to ignore. That night, lying in her bed, Olivia admitted to herself that she could not go on like this indefinitely. She was in love with Vincent Morrison, thoroughly and completely. She loved his quiet strength, his fairness, the way he treated everyone from his ranch hands to his horses with respect. She loved the rare moments when his guard came down and she glimpsed the man beneath the capable rancher, someone who had been hurt by life but remained fundamentally decent. But what could she do about it? She was living in his house, dependent on him for everything. Any declaration of feeling on her part could be seen as inappropriate or even calculating, as if she were trying to secure her position through romance rather than honest work. The situation seemed impossible, and Olivia fell asleep with a heavy heart. The next morning, Vincent was up before dawn despite his injury, and Olivia found him in the barn when she went out to gather eggs from the henhouse. "I thought you were going to rest," she said, exasperated. "I am resting. I am just doing it out here instead of in the house." He was sitting on a hay bale mending a bridle. The work did not require standing, at least. Olivia set down her egg basket and came to stand in front of him, hands on her hips. "You are the most stubborn man I have ever met. I have been told that before." He looked up at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart skip. "Olivia, I need to talk to you about something." The serious tone made her nervous. "What is it?" He set aside the bridle and stood, wincing slightly at the pressure on his ankle. "I have been thinking about your situation here. It has been almost 2 months now, and while you have done excellent work, I realize this arrangement might not be what you want long term." Olivia felt her stomach drop. Was he dismissing her? "Have I done something wrong?" "No, God, no. You have been perfect." He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "That is actually the problem. You have made yourself indispensable, and I have realized that my motivations for wanting you to stay might not be entirely proper." She stared at him, afraid to understand what he might mean. "I do not follow." Vincent took a breath, meeting her eyes. "When I offered you a job that day at the station, it was because you needed help and I could provide it. That was true. But over these past weeks, my feelings have become more complicated. I look forward to coming back to the house because you are there. I find excuses to check on things that do not need checking because it means I might see you. I think about you when I should be thinking about cattle and fence lines." Olivia's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "Vincent, I know it is not appropriate," he continued, the words coming faster now as if he needed to get them all out. "You came here for a job, for safety and security. I gave you my word that you would be treated with respect, and developing feelings for you breaks that promise in a way. If you want to leave, if this makes you uncomfortable, I will help you find another situation. I will give you references, money for travel, whatever you need. But I could not keep pretending that I see you as just someone who works for me when the truth is so much more than that." For a moment, Olivia could not speak. Joy and relief and disbelief were all warring inside her. "You have feelings for me?" "Yes." He said it simply, without elaboration, watching her face anxiously. "Vincent Morrison, you are the most frustrating, wonderful man." Olivia stepped closer to him, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "I've been tying myself in knots for weeks trying to hide the fact that I have fallen in love with you." His eyes widened. "You have?" "Yes, you stubborn fool. Did you really think I could live here, see you every day, see how good and decent you are, and not fall in love with you? I thought maybe you were just grateful, or that you saw me as an employer, nothing more. I was grateful at first, but that changed so fast I barely noticed it happening. By the time you brought me that book from town, I was already halfway in love with you. When you worried about me falling off that chair, I was completely gone." Vincent reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, and cupped her face in his calloused hands. "I did not dare hope you might feel the same way. I was terrified you would never see me as anything but a responsibility you had taken on. You stopped being just a responsibility about 5 minutes after we left the station in Eureka." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "When you accepted my help with dignity instead of shame, when you held your head high despite being in an impossible situation, I started seeing you as someone remarkable. That has only gotten stronger every day since." Olivia reached up to cover his hands with her own. So what do we do now? Well, I would very much like to kiss you if you would allow it. I would very much like that too. Vincent lowered his head slowly, and when their lips met, it was soft and sweet and perfect. Olivia felt like something in her chest was unfurling, like a flower opening to the sun. This was what she had traveled across the country hoping to find. Not just security or survival, but genuine connection, real love. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I should probably court you properly," Vincent said. "Take you to town for dinner, maybe to the church social next month. That would be nice. But I think we have been courting each other without realizing it for weeks now. Maybe so." He kissed her again, longer this time, and Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling safe and cherished and home. They stood there in the barn, holding each other, until the sound of approaching horses made them step apart. Tom and Miguel were coming back from checking the northern fence line, and while Olivia no longer cared who knew about her feelings for Vincent, she appreciated his discretion. "We should talk more about this," Vincent said quietly. "About what it means, what we both want. Tonight, after dinner." "Tonight." He touched her face once more, wonderingly, then stepped back as the ranch hands came into view. The rest of the day passed in a haze for Olivia. She went through her usual tasks, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the conversation in the barn over and over. Vincent loved her. He wanted her, not just as a housekeeper, but as someone special in his life. It seemed too good to be true, and yet it was real. That evening, after dinner was finished and cleaned up, she and Vincent sat together on the porch as the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple. Vincent had pulled a second chair close to his own, and they sat with their hands intertwined. "I want to marry you," Vincent said without preamble. "Not right away if you need time, but eventually. I want you to be my wife, not my housekeeper." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "I want that too." "But Vincent, you should know that I bring nothing to a marriage. No dowry, no family connections, no property, just myself and my labor." He turned to look at her, his expression serious in the fading light. "Your presence is payment enough, more than enough. You have already given me more than I dared hope for just by being here, by caring about this place and about me. I do not need anything else. Are you certain? Most men would want more from a wife. I am not most men, and you are not most women." He raised their joined hands and kissed her knuckles. "I am offering you my heart and my home and my name, freely given with no expectation beyond your willingness to build a life together. If that is what you want, then I am the luckiest man in Nevada." "It is what I want," Olivia whispered. "More than anything." "Then we are agreed. We will marry as soon as you feel ready." They sat together as the stars came out, making plans in quiet voices. They would go to town together next week and speak to Reverend Thomas about a wedding. It would be simple, just the ranch hands and a few people from town as witnesses. Olivia did not need a fancy dress or an elaborate celebration. She just needed Vincent, promising to love her for the rest of their lives. The next few weeks were busy with preparations. Olivia sewed herself a new dress in a soft blue fabric that Vincent had bought for her in town, insisting that she should have something special even if the wedding itself was small. Miguel's wife, Rosa, came out to the ranch to help with the sewing and to keep Olivia company, and the two women quickly became friends. "Vincent is a good man," Rosa told her as they worked on the dress together. "He deserves happiness, and I think you will give him that." "I hope so." "He has certainly given it to me. It is clear how much he loves you, the way he looks at you, like you are the sun and moon together." Rosa smiled. "Miguel says he has never seen Vincent so happy." The wedding took place on a crisp October morning at the small church in Eureka. Olivia wore her blue dress and carried wildflowers that Jamie had picked for her that morning. Vincent stood at the altar in a new suit, looking both nervous and elated. Tom stood up as his witness, and Rosa as Olivia's. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When Reverend Thomas asked if Vincent would take Olivia as his wife, he answered with a firm, "I will," that echoed through the small church. When Olivia made her own vows, her voice shook with emotion but never wavered. And when Vincent kissed her as his wife for the first time, Olivia felt like every hardship she had endured to get to this moment had been worth it. They held a small celebration at the ranch afterwards, with food and music and dancing. The ranch hands had decorated the yard with lanterns, and someone had brought a fiddle. Vincent danced with Olivia under the stars, both of them laughing, and she thought she had never been happier. Later that night, alone together in Vincent's room, which was now their room, he held her gently and told her again how much he loved her. "I did not think I would ever have this," he admitted, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "After losing so much, I thought maybe I was meant to be alone, and then you stepped off that train and changed everything." "I was so frightened that day," Olivia said. "Everything I had planned was gone, and I had no idea what would happen to me. And then you offered me hope when I had none." "We saved each other, I think." "Yes, I think we did." Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. The winter was harsh, with heavy snows that made travel difficult and losses among the cattle. Money was tight, and there were long stretches when they had to be careful with every penny. But they faced it all together, and somehow that made even the hard times bearable. Olivia proved herself invaluable in ways beyond housekeeping. She had a head for figures and began keeping the ranch's books, finding ways to stretch their budget further. She learned to help with the animals when needed, overcoming her initial fear of the huge cattle. And she provided something less tangible but equally important: a reason for Vincent to come home at the end of each day, a warmth at the center of their house that made everything else worthwhile. Vincent, in turn, was everything Olivia could have hoped for in a husband. He was patient with her as she adjusted to ranch life, protective without being controlling, and unfailingly kind even when he was exhausted from work. He supported her when she wanted to start teaching Jamie to read and write in the evenings, seeing the value in education even for a ranch hand. And he loved her with a steady, deep devotion that never wavered. By their first anniversary, the ranch was doing better financially, and Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent one evening after dinner, watching his face carefully for his reaction. For a moment he just stared at her, and then joy spread across his features like sunrise. "Truly, truly. Rosa thinks the baby will come in early summer." Vincent swept her into his arms, holding her close. "A baby, our baby. Olivia, I cannot believe it. Are you happy about it?" "Happy. I am overwhelmed. I am terrified. I am more grateful than I can express." He pulled back to look at her face. "Are you happy?" "Yes, so very happy." The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia was sick for months, barely able to keep anything down. Vincent worried constantly, hovering over her until she finally had to shoo him away so he would get some work done. Rosa came to stay for a few weeks when the sickness was at its worst, and her calm presence helped both of them. But as Olivia's belly grew round with their child, the sickness faded and was replaced by a sense of wonder. Vincent would put his hand on her stomach and feel the baby move, his expression awed. At night he would talk to the baby, telling it stories about the ranch and the world it would be born into. "What if I am not a good father?" he asked one night, his vulnerability showing through. "You will be an excellent father. You are patient and kind and strong. Our child will be lucky to have you. I want to give them everything, a better life than I had, security and love and opportunity. We will give them all of that, together." Their son was born on a hot June day in 1880, after a labor that lasted nearly 20 hours and left Olivia exhausted but triumphant. Vincent had paced outside like a caged animal until Rosa finally allowed him into the bedroom to meet his child. The baby was small and red and perfect, with dark hair and a surprisingly loud cry. When Vincent held him for the first time, tears ran unashamedly down his face. "He is beautiful," he whispered. "Olivia, he is perfect." "He has your nose," she said, exhausted but happy. They named him William, after Vincent's father who had died at Shiloh. William Vincent Morrison, their son and heir to everything they were building together. Parenthood transformed them both. Vincent, who had always been reserved, became openly affectionate with his son. He would carry William in a sling while doing lighter ranch work, talking to him constantly. He built a cradle with his own hands, carving it with care and attention to detail. Olivia discovered a fierce protectiveness she had not known she possessed. She marveled at every tiny change in their son, every new sound he made, every milestone he reached. And she felt a deep satisfaction in giving Vincent the family he had lost, in helping to fill the holes that grief had left in his life. As William grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. They were able to hire another hand, and then another. They bought more land, expanding their grazing range. The house was improved and expanded, with a new room added for William and another for guests. But despite their growing success, neither Vincent nor Olivia lost sight of what truly mattered. On quiet evenings, they would sit on the porch together while William played at their feet, and they would talk about how far they had come. "You ever regret it?" Vincent asked once. "Staying here instead of going back east?" "Never, not for a single moment." Olivia reached for his hand. "This is my home. You are my home. I have everything I ever wanted right here." "I love you," he said simply. "More than I can ever properly express. I know, and I love you just as much." When William was 3 years old, Olivia became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and their daughter was born on a crisp autumn evening, as the leaves were turning gold on the few trees that grew near the house. They named her Sarah, and she had Olivia's blonde hair and Vincent's gray eyes. William was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything and showering her with clumsy but genuine affection. Their family felt complete now, rounded out and full. Vincent would come in from the range to find Olivia nursing Sarah, while William played with wooden horses Vincent had carved for him, and he would think about that day at the station in Eureka, when he had made an impulsive offer to a desperate woman. It had been the best decision of his life. The years continued to pass, bringing their share of joys and sorrows. There were good years when the cattle thrived and money was plentiful, and lean years when they had to tighten their belts and hope for better times. There were frightening moments when William broke his arm falling from a horse, or when Sarah came down with a fever that had them both terrified until it finally broke. But through it all, Vincent and Olivia faced life together as partners in every sense of the word. They made decisions jointly, supported each other through hard times, and celebrated the good times with grateful hearts. The ranch hands who had been there from the beginning watched William and Sarah grow up, becoming honorary uncles who taught the children to ride and rope, and all the skills they would need to eventually take over the ranch. Tom, now gray-haired and slower but still sharp, would tell stories of their parents' early days together, much to the children's delight. "Your pa gave your ma a job when she had nothing," Tom would say. "And she gave him a reason to come home at night. Best trade either of them ever made." As William and Sarah grew older, they learned the full story of how their parents had met. Olivia did not hide the fact that she had been a mail-order bride whose intended had died, leaving her stranded and desperate. She wanted her children to understand that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead to the best outcomes, that hardship can be a doorway to blessing. "Were you scared?" Sarah asked when she was 10, curled up next to her mother as Olivia mended clothes. "Terrified," Olivia admitted. "I was alone in a strange place with no money and no prospects. But your father showed me kindness when I needed it most, and everything else grew from there." "He rescued you," William said, making it sound like a fairy tale. "We rescued each other," Olivia corrected gently. "He needed someone to care for the house and to care about him. I needed safety and a chance to build a new life. We each gave the other what was needed." Vincent, overhearing from the doorway, smiled. "Your mother is right. It was not a rescue, it was a partnership, and it still is." By the time William was 16 and Sarah 13, the ranch had grown considerably. They were one of the most successful operations in the area, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. Vincent had established himself as a leader in the community, often called upon to mediate disputes or offer advice. But success had not changed him fundamentally. He was still the same steady, honest man who had offered help to a stranger at a train station. He still worked as hard as any of his hands, still treated everyone with respect, and still looked at Olivia like she was the most precious thing in his world. One evening, as they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a family dinner, Vincent stood and raised his glass. "20 years ago, I married the most remarkable woman I have ever known. She had nothing when I met her except courage and dignity and a refusal to give up. She has given me everything: a home, a family, a purpose beyond just surviving. Olivia, you are still the best thing that ever happened to me." Olivia felt tears gather in her eyes. After 2 decades together, he could still make her feel cherished and seen. "And you gave me a place to belong when I had nowhere. You saw value in me when I was not sure I saw it in myself. These 20 years have been the happiest of my life." William and Sarah applauded, and the dinner continued with laughter and stories. Later, after the children had gone to bed, Vincent and Olivia walked outside under the stars. "You ever think about that day at the station?" Vincent asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Sometimes. I think about how different everything could have been if you had not been there, or if you had not offered to help. I think I was meant to be there, like it was all supposed to happen exactly as it did." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. "Providence or chance, I am grateful for it. You took a risk on me when you had no reason to. Not a risk, an opportunity I would have been a fool to pass up." He kissed the top of her head. "Your presence really was payment enough, you know. Everything else has been a bonus I did not expect." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the familiar landscape that had become their kingdom. The ranch that Vincent had built alone was now a legacy they shared, something to pass on to their children and grandchildren. The next few years brought changes as William began to take on more responsibilities at the ranch, preparing to eventually run it himself. He had inherited his father's steadiness and his mother's head for business, making him well suited to leadership. Sarah, meanwhile, had developed a love of books and learning that reminded Vincent so much of Olivia when he had first met her. "I want to be a teacher," Sarah announced one evening when she was 16. Like grandmother was. Olivia felt pride swell in her chest. "That is a wonderful goal." "But that means leaving the ranch, does not it? Going away to get proper training." Vincent and Olivia exchanged glances. They had known this day would come, when their children would begin to forge their own paths. It was hard to imagine Sarah leaving, but they both understood the importance of following your dreams. "We will find a way to make it happen," Vincent said firmly. "If teaching is your calling, then you should pursue it." Arrangements were made for Sarah to attend a teaching college in Carson City. It was only a few days' journey away, close enough that she could come home for holidays, but far enough to feel like a real separation. The day they took her to catch the train, Olivia could not help but think of herself stepping off a train in Eureka all those years ago, frightened and uncertain. But Sarah was not frightened. She was excited, confident in her family's support and her own abilities. She hugged her parents fiercely before boarding, promising to write every week. "She will be fine," Vincent said, squeezing Olivia's hand as the train pulled away. "I know. But I will miss her." "So will I. But we raised her right to be strong and independent. This is what we wanted for her." With Sarah away at school and William increasingly capable of handling ranch operations, Vincent and Olivia found themselves with more time together than they had had in years. They took long rides across their land, reconnecting with each other without the constant demands of young children. They made plans for the future, discussing what they wanted their later years to look like. "I want to travel," Olivia said one evening. "Not far, but I would like to see more of this country we live in. Maybe visit California, see the ocean. We could do that." "Take a few weeks, leave William in charge. He is ready for it." "Are you sure you could stand to be away from the ranch for that long?" Vincent pulled her close. "I can stand anything as long as you are with me. The ranch is important, but you are what matters most." They did take that trip, spending 3 weeks traveling through California and seeing sights that amazed them both. The ocean was everything Olivia had imagined and more, vast and powerful and beautiful. They stayed in San Francisco for a few days, marveling at how different city life was from their ranch, but they were both glad to return home. The ranch was where they belonged, where their roots had grown deep over more than 2 decades. William had managed everything perfectly in their absence, proving he was truly ready to take over when the time came. Sarah graduated from teaching college and returned to Eureka, accepting a position at the town school. She boarded with a family in town during the week and came home on weekends. She was a natural teacher, patient and enthusiastic, loved by her students. It was at a church social that Sarah met Thomas Fletcher, a young surveyor who had come to the area to work on a railroad expansion project. He was 24 to her 20, well-educated and ambitious, with a kind smile and genuine interest in her work. Vincent, watching them talk, felt a pang of protectiveness mixed with recognition. He remembered being young and falling in love, how all-consuming it had felt. "He seems like a good man," Olivia said quietly, standing beside him. "He better be, or he will answer to me." She laughed softly. "Remember that you were once a stranger who took an interest in a young woman. Give him a chance." Thomas proved himself worthy over the following months. He courted Sarah properly, respecting her independence while making clear his admiration for her. He asked Vincent's permission before proposing, a conversation that Vincent appreciated even as he realized he could not say no even if he wanted to. Sarah loved Thomas, and that was what mattered. The wedding took place at the same church where Vincent and Olivia had married all those years ago. Sarah was a beautiful bride, glowing with happiness as she pledged her life to Thomas. Watching them, Olivia felt the circle completing itself. She and Vincent had found each other against all odds and had built a beautiful life. Now their daughter was beginning the same journey. William married 2 years later to a rancher's daughter named Charlotte, who was as comfortable on horseback as she was in a kitchen. They settled into the main house on the ranch, while Vincent and Olivia moved into a smaller but comfortable cottage nearby. It was time to pass the torch, to let the next generation take the lead while they provided support and wisdom from the sidelines. The transition was not always easy. Vincent struggled with letting go of control, with trusting William to make his own decisions even when he might have chosen differently. But Olivia helped him through it, reminding him that they had raised their son well and needed to trust that. "You gave him the tools," she said. "Now let him use them." As Vincent and Olivia entered their 50s, they found a new rhythm to life. They were still active and involved, but no longer carried the weight of the ranch's day-to-day operations. They had time to simply be together, to enjoy the fruits of their decades of labor. Grandchildren arrived. First, William and Charlotte had twin boys, then Sarah and Thomas had a daughter, then more babies followed in steady succession. Vincent and Olivia delighted in their grandchildren, spoiling them in ways they had never had the luxury of doing with their own children when times were tighter. "We are becoming a dynasty," Vincent joked one evening as they watched their expanding family gathered for Sunday dinner. "We are becoming what we always wanted, a family," Olivia corrected. "A real, lasting family." On their 30th anniversary, the entire family gathered for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled the ranch, and friends from throughout the region came to honor the couple who had become pillars of the community. There were speeches and toasts, laughter and music. But the moment that meant the most to Olivia came near the end of the evening, when Vincent took her hand and led her away from the crowd to the porch where they had sat so many evenings over the years. 30 years, he said wonderingly. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I saw you at that station, looking lost and brave at the same time. Other times it feels like you have always been part of my life." "We have built something good, haven't we?" Olivia said. "Better than good, better than I ever dreamed possible." He cupped her face in his hands, the same gesture he had made so long ago in the barn. "You transformed my life, Olivia. You took a lonely cowboy with a struggling ranch and gave him love and purpose and a legacy. I still mean what I said. Your presence was payment enough. Everything else has been grace." Olivia kissed him, tasting salt from the tears running down both their faces. "I love you, still, always, forever." "Forever," he agreed. The years continued to roll by, bringing the inevitable changes that time brings. Vincent's hair turned gray, then white. Olivia's face gained lines, particularly around her eyes from decades of smiling. They both slowed down physically, though their minds remained sharp, and their love for each other never dimmed. They celebrated as their grandchildren grew up, finished school, started families of their own. The ranch continued to prosper under William's management, and Sarah's children were making their own marks on the world. Thomas had risen to become a successful railroad administrator, and he and Sarah split their time between Eureka and Sacramento. On a crisp autumn afternoon in 1902, Vincent and Olivia sat together on the porch of their cottage. They were both 71 years old now, having celebrated their 43rd anniversary the previous October. Their bodies were frailer than they once were, but they still enjoyed these quiet moments together. "You have any regrets?" Vincent asked, a question he had posed several times over the years. Olivia's answer was always the same. "Not a single one. Neither do I. Marrying you was the best thing I ever did. Accepting your offer was the smartest decision I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands as the sun set over the land they had spent a lifetime building together. In the distance, they could see their great-grandchildren playing, their laughter carrying on the evening air. Vincent Morrison had been a lonely cowboy who needed someone to make his house a home. Olivia Brennan had been a desperate woman who needed someone to give her a chance. Together, they had created something neither could have achieved alone. A love that lasted, a family that thrived, and a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. That evening, as they prepared for bed, Vincent held Olivia close and told her one more time how much he loved her. She fell asleep in his arms, content and complete. Neither of them lived to see the next sunrise. They passed away in their sleep, still holding each other, their hearts giving out within minutes of each other after 43 years of beating in tandem. The funeral was held on a warm autumn day, and it seemed like half of Nevada came to pay their respects. Stories were told of Vincent's fairness and integrity, of Olivia's kindness and strength. But the story everyone loved best was the one about how they met. A woman stranded at a station with no dowry and no prospects, a cowboy who said her presence was payment enough, and the remarkable life they built from that single moment of compassion. William, now gray-haired himself, stood before the gathering and spoke of his parents' legacy. They taught us that family is not just who you are born to, but who you choose and who chooses you. They showed us that love is both a feeling and a decision, a promise you make and keep every single day. They built all of this, he gestured to the ranch sprawling around them. But more importantly, they built each other up, supported each other, and loved each other without reservation. That is what they leave us. Not just land and cattle, but an example of how to live and love well. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the vast Nevada sky they had both loved. The headstones were simple, bearing their names and years and a single inscription that Vincent had once said, and that became the motto of their lives together. Your presence is payment enough. The ranch continued for generations after them, remaining in the family and growing even larger and more successful. But no matter how much time passed, every member of the family knew the story of Vincent and Olivia, the cowboy and the woman at the station who had nothing but each other and built an empire of love from that foundation. Their cottage was preserved as it had been, eventually becoming a small museum of sorts for the family. The bedroom where they had died together remained untouched, the bed made, their photographs on the wall. Grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren would visit and hear the stories, learning about the people whose courage and love had created the family they belonged to. The twin plots on the hill became a place of pilgrimage for the family. On anniversaries and holidays, someone would always climb up to leave flowers and to remember. And on quiet evenings, some swore they could still see two figures sitting on the porch of the old cottage, holding hands and watching the sunset together, bound by a love that not even death could diminish. Vincent Morrison had offered help to a stranger when she needed it most, asking nothing in return. Olivia Brennan had accepted that help with dignity and gratitude, and repaid it with a lifetime of devotion. Together they proved that the greatest riches are not counted in gold or land, but in the love we give and receive, the families we build, and the legacies we leave behind. Their story became legend in Eureka and beyond. A reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to the best, that kindness can change everything, and that true love is not about what you bring to a relationship, but about what you build together once you are in it. And so the tale ended as all the best love stories do, with two people who found each other against all odds, who chose each other every day, who built a beautiful life together, and who left the world a better place than they found it. Their presence in each other's lives had been payment enough, and from that simple truth grew a love that lasted not just a lifetime, but for all the generations that followed.